agenda that's been posted. We have
You gonna do anything about this November?
We have minutes to review, which we'll start with. November 15th, I believe, was the meeting.
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions, changes? Brant?
For November 15th, in the countryside section, second sentence says they make $300,000 a month and be running out of a month by the end of the year. They lose about $250,000 a month, and the projection at the time was they'd run out of money, not month, money by the end of the year.
Would you make that correction?
I didn't hear me say lose.
Right, so instead of saying they make $300,000 a year, they lose $250,000 a month.
200
Yep,
to 250?
No.
$250,000 a month.
Okay.
Does anybody have an objection to that change? Is everybody in favor of that change? Okay, Lauren, roll call.
Who made the second?
Yes.
Yes.
Carly?
Yes.
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 Unanimous. So that was a suggestion by Brant.
And who made the second one?
We didn't have a motion. I guess it was a form of a motion.
I'll second that motion.
David seconded it. Any other comments on previous notes, minutes of meeting?
Motion to accept.
Okay, motion to accept the minutes as amended. Lauren?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Unanimous. Okay, subcommittee reports. There are no big items on the agenda today. It's all subcommittee reports right now. One question that's come up, Paul, you want to just come up and mention Larry's request?
Comprehensive plan?
Yes.
You need me to go there just to
Yes.
mention that?
You promised we would ask.
Yeah, just so it was mentioned, I believe, at the last meeting, that the comprehensive plan is going forward for the town. There was money approved at town meeting and money that was allocated through a grant, and they needed a member of this committee to be a part of the comprehensive plan subcommittee, so they were looking for part of that was a representative from the finance committee.
Mr. Chairman, you were the one that emailed me who volunteered. I was actually the one that ended up
I think
volunteering.
someone may have.
Chris.
and
That was
they
me.
just-
Are you officially volunteering to
Yes,
be
I did the first time, and I forgot to reply to your email. So yes, I was the one, the
I
anonymous
told
person. that-
Larry I did not
I was
have
the anonymous person who
on
volunteered.
record an agreement.
It was me.
So
So yes, I'm officially
is
volunteering.
there a motion to, I guess it's not a point, well, it is, it's to select our representative to the committee?
I think that's
That's
just
Chris
chairman's
Moore.
prerogative. So I don't think you need a motion for that.
Okay? Does anybody object to me appointing Chris?
They might, but that doesn't work.
I think I might. You got me in a moment a couple months ago, so.
What's the official name, the planning committee?
It's the comprehensive plan, whatever it is. The comprehensive plan, maybe subcommittee or committee, whatever.
Okay.
Chris will tell us more when
It's called the whatchamacallit, and yeah. Good job,
I will
Paul.
send Larry a note that we all agree, and Chris is our representative. Okay, our monthly update on Countryside from the subcommittee.
Sure, so I think a good place to start would be, we tried to have a meeting before the holidays. We didn't quite get to a consensus, quorum, I'm sorry. So it wasn't an official meeting, we ended up having a conversation. And that we recorded, it's a good conversation, I would encourage anybody to watch this. And the nature of that was to spend some time with Brian Murray and Jerry Moody, the town attorneys, to understand more about the history of Countryside and kind of how we got here. that was precipitated by, us spending some time looking at these establishment documents. And as a group, we were kind of asking questions amongst ourselves around like, well, this establishment documents make them, give them an awful lot of autonomy and authority. And when you read it, it's a very autonomous organization. And we kept scratching our heads and saying, well, who has the authority to sell? Who has the authority to sell the land? Who has the authority to sell the business as a concern in totality? When they sell, what happens with the proceeds, other types of questions, right? So it was a great opportunity to hear from attorneys who also possess a ton of history of town knowledge and how we got here. And what we learned from that was, it was a great conversation around, back in probably 81, 82, this countryside was actually a department of the town. And I think our forefathers on the finance committee had a lot of concerns about the financial situation and stability of this, and it really spun it off. And it's really a quasi-state-owned agency now, and it's not owned by the town in any way whatsoever, which I think we probably all didn't completely understand that. Maybe some did, but I know I certainly didn't. So the town doesn't own it, doesn't own Countryside, and they really have complete and total authority to behave as they choose. They have a board that's appointed by our select board, but they really don't report to the select board. They don't report to the town. They don't report to anybody in any way, because they're a standalone agency and they're really kind of a quasi-state agency, but not a town agency at all. And it helped clarify for us, what sort of, our role in this. And the simplicity of our role is really around, we have the ability to give them money or not. Now, we obviously all have an opinion about that. We've written a letter. We've already stated we think that we shouldn't continue to fund them. But I think it was interesting just to clarify that the situation. You learn more about the situation. You stop and you reflect on the situation, and you think about it's still this agency here that's in town, beloved, of course. It gives great service. The town has been giving it an awful lot of money as we go. We've been talking about the millions that we've given them over the years since the pandemic. We have a lot of concerns about its future, in terms of financial future and its ability to get back to break even. The truth is we don't own it. We don't own the proceeds of anything that would happen to it. We're just really the bank. That's really where we are. So I think that was interesting to kind of clarify. So I would encourage people to go watch that if they haven't, because it was good, and we're spending a lot of time on this as a key topic and having a clear understanding of those things that we were all asking of each other and not really knowing the answers. I think it's great to have behind us. The update on the financials, the November financials are out, also with that year-to-date, because it's almost a full calendar year behind us. So in November, we lost about $190,000 when you net out the miscellaneous income. So $190,000 a little better than the year-to-date average, which is about $250,000 a month loss. So we're down about $2.7 million cash burned on about $14 million of top line. So you get a sense of scale for sort of that loss rate. There's nothing in these numbers that makes me think that the conversations we've had should be revisited in any way whatsoever. We've been looking at this and saying we lose $250,000 a month, and we lost $191. Okay, that's a little bit better, but we're still in that same range where we're continuing to lose money, and I still have that same opinion of I am rooting for them, and I really hope they can sort this out, but I don't think that the taxpayers should give them funding going forward.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add a little bit. On the 1982, the town made a smart move. The town tried to divorce itself from the nursing home by, as Brant pointed out, spinning it off from a town department into an independent agency. Then 20 years later, we managed to re-entangle ourselves in the nursing home by taking on all of this debt and thereby making ourselves the primary creditor of the entity. And it's an independent agency, and town council made great pains to point out that they can make their own decisions and we don't control them. However, the enabling legislation does provide the select board with the ability to remove all of the trustees for the geriatric authority for cause. So if they chose to, they could effectively reinsert town control if we wanted to take certain actions that the authority wasn't willing to take. But we kind of created, in my view, the worst of both worlds with the divorce and then the borrowing, where we're now the largest stakeholder effectively in the entity, whereas at the same time we don't control it. I think that the trustees of the geriatric authority do have some fiduciary duty now to the town, since we are the largest debt holder of that entity and it is an insolvent entity. But I otherwise fully agree with everything that Brant said.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I mean, I think it was an incredible piece of history to realize that we knew there was a financial problem and got ourselves out of it by spinning it off, and then that roughly 20 years later decided to borrow a lot of money and re-entangle ourselves with less control. In hindsight, seems like a strange decision. With the benefit of hindsight, it was going fine until, I guess, the pandemic, roughly, it would appear. But that does seem like that was a strange decision against that first one.
So the loans that the town made to the geriatric authority are uncollateralized? We have no recourse?
Town council referred to it as secured.
With what?
Number one, I don't know if we technically have a mortgage on the building. They do own the land, as we understand it, the land and the surrounding building. I mean, look, in terms of creditor enforcement mechanism, we are the largest creditor. I suppose we could take collection action and try to seize that property. But, that's only whatever the property is worth, right? And that's why we've been trying to encourage them now for a couple of years to explore other options that might result in a higher recovery than just a wholesale liquidation.
Now, one thing I want to bring up, when we talk about, you mentioned that you could remove the trustees. I haven't found a reason to remove them. I think they're swimming upstream, that every entity in the Commonwealth, except for 2, has been taken over. So removing, I don't want anybody thinking we think the trustees are doing something wrong. Okay? I mean...
Well, can I put my lawyer hat on for a minute?
Sure.
I would argue that a board of governors or trustees or directors or whatever they call themselves of an insolvent institution that create no plan to fix the insolvency and have no plan of action on how to continue to sustain themselves could be breaching a fiduciary duty.
But I could come back to you and say, I have a plan.
And what is the plan?
Get $3 million a year from the town.
From an unwilling lender? That's a pretty slender read, in my opinion.
But Andy, when we say unwilling, $4.5 million ago, we said unwilling. And yet, every year, town meeting comes up. I'm not arguing.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, realistically, I don't think they could have done anything to turn this ship around.
Well, no, but they have had plenty of advance notice now that there is a significant constituency that opposes further funding, and a prudent person might be taking active steps.
And it's going to hit a little closer to home when I give the capital subcommittee report, because we just had Highway come to us and talk about $3 million of surprise capital. And I don't know how we don't do it. I mean, shutting down Central Street just doesn't make sense when you're going to need $1.7 million or $1.3 million in extra funding to fix the bridge that most people don't even know exists. And it came out to about $3 million in surprise expenses that just hit because of increased. And we have to take into consideration when we build the budget that we start building next month, the fact that if Countryside is going to need $2 or $3 million, one option is to cut back on every department in town on their capital or initiatives. And that's not something that anybody's going to be happy about either. So I think the discussion will be come May, what I asked 2 years ago, how much is it worth to town meeting to have the geriatric authority in Milford?
Yeah, and I would point out, and I'm going to keep saying this at every meeting, that number one, I've had a few people comment to me on how taxes have bumped up a little bit. That's number one. Number two, you're looking at a continuous stream of $200 to $250 per household if Countryside were to continue to be funded. Number three, we all know you're probably talking about a $400, $500, $600 a household bill for the new high school.
If we're lucky.
lucky. So pretty soon, that all adds up to real money.
Well, but again, that's the point. That's where the discussion has to happen, because people have asked, what did it cost us last year? It's $80 a million. We gave 2.5 extra million. That's $200 on your tax rate for everybody. So it's starting to become real. And we're just going to have a discussion. And candidly, if the town meeting says adding $200, $300 a year to people's tax bill is worth it, we salute the flag and implement what town meeting says. That's our job. But then you just have to deal with, how do you cover $3 million of highway? And in 3 or 4 years, it's going to be $7 or $8 million of high school. So, David, you had a question?
Yeah, it was more of a statement, but everybody said everything. But I just want to clarify one thing. I think, Brent, you said we're the ones that can decide or not decide if they get funding or not.
Well, not us directly.
Right,
We
it's
don't make
through town meeting. I mean, our job basically is to say, review it, approve it, and not approve it. One thing is really disheartening is the lack of transparency on their end. They are on a calendar year, not a fiscal year. We haven't seen a 2024 budget. We don't know what they're looking. We don't even know what they're going to be looking for cash next year or next fiscal year, but for next calendar year, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is, I'd like to have them here as part of the budget meeting process, like you said. If they want another $2 million, let them tell us where we should cut the $2 million from. Because I would argue that is what they're, just because of the lack of transparency, there's no oversight, there's no financial oversight. They're not telling us, how things are going on a monthly basis. We have to ask for the monthly financial reports every month, and they're late, and they're, you look at the date when they're finished, and it's like 5 to 10 days after the month end. Send it to us. Just send us the report so we can look at it with a little narrative, like, how is it going? What do you see? Because what everybody's been saying here, they're an independent agency. They have full reign. They can do whatever they want to do. So, I think we should voice our displeasure of the lack of transparency and let town meeting do what they want to do, say vote yes or no, and have their taxes increased. But I'm not happy about that.
Carly?
I was actually thinking about asking a question that's similar to what David was saying. As I think about, we had Scotty come in for highway, and we have everyone planned out from a capital perspective over the next 6 months so we can understand their long-range plans and how to think about their capital. I heard the conversation when I was here before the holidays, and it was a helpful conversation. Is it feasible or realistic to think, although they're an independent agency, if we want to plan capital appropriately, is it feasible for them to be able to come in, just like we ask every other department head to come in and help us understand their capital needs
Absolutely.
going forward? I don't think, David, that we can actually question or think about how they are running the business. I think that's out of our purview based on what the lawyers said, but if they are going to request capital, I don't see why, from a long-range perspective, it's different than what we ask the other department heads to do.
I don't think we're telling them how to run their business and what to cut and not cut and how to run their business. But I think we, as a fiduciary, we're a board and advisory committee. We have a fiduciary responsibility to our taxpayers. Not having all the information to be able to opine on it, that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying run your business and cut nurses or whatever you need to do. All I'm saying is give us the information, let us know how you're doing so we can have an intellectual conversation about it. It's for our taxpayers. We're all taxpayers here, so why not?
To add to the budget conversation, though, is we've been watching these numbers together for a while. If they had a budget that got back to break even, I would still expect it's going to cost $250,000 a month. I mean, we've had budgets, we've worked on budgets that got back to break even and then we miss them, and there's no ability to course correct because it's just the headwinds, I think to what you were alluding to, are so strong in their face. I think we have a pretty good read on what's going to happen, whether it's budgeted or unbudgeted, just to be blunt.
It's to me, it's accountability. They have, like, to the point of they're a board of trustees or wherever they are, they have accountability, right? What is their accountability on a fiscal responsibility on their end? Do they have any? I don't know. I haven't seen anything. I mean, I don't even know if they review funding. I don't know what they do.
Well,
I don't know what they're
realistically,
right. What's that?
That's up to them to do.
No, I understand that, but it's also, I think, our role to advise and oversee it as well.
realistically, we're going to have some hard discussions. let me roll into a quick recap of the Capital Committee meeting this month. This month was focusing on highway. Scotty Christofoli came in with 2 surprises. Number 1 is the Central Street Bridge, which is right by the highway barn. Most people don't know there's a bridge there. Most people don't know that it was built 80, 100 years ago, and it's really under stress to the point where the Mass Department of Transportation is inspecting it every 60 days. They're that worried about safety on it. We had put away in a previous town meeting $1.753 million, which was the estimate to repair it. In the last 2 years, it's now up to $3 million. Now, Scotty's going to try and see if there's things we can do, like shutting down Central Street for 3 months to save us $200,000-300,000. But even if he saves us hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's still going to be $1.5 million unallocated money. It's not in the long-term capital plan. We never expected to need this money. So you got 1.7, let's figure there. And then he mentioned the Godfrey Brook. We had a collapse. The brook is running over between Water Street and West Street, down by the old telephone company. That brook there. That's going to go up. We had estimated it was going to cost $733,000. Now the estimate is $978,000, which we pay 40%. So when you add all this up, we're going to have to go to town meeting and ask for $300 to $350. Now these numbers are silly putty. They're cast in silly putty. Scotty's just learning, and he's going to go out to bid, and he's going to see, not to bid, he's going to make inquiries, because we can't bid until town meeting tells us the money's allocated. That's the difference on municipal, is that most people know that you can't go out and ask, request for proposal unless you're funded. So we got to come up with the best idea, $1.3 million on the Central Street Bridge and $300 to $350 on the Godfrey Brook repair. Get town meeting to approve it, then he can ask for hard bids. But again, that's something we've got to take into consideration.
Can you refresh me on the Godfrey Brook? Is that private, that waterway?
Here's the issue that we faced over the last few decades. Technically, the Godfrey Brook belongs to the people who own the property. So when we did the first part, just below the Consigli Funeral Home, that Godfrey Brook section that we fixed, the culvert, we paid for it. The town does not have, my understanding, legal responsibility to pay for it. But you couldn't turn your back on the guy or the families who had the water within 2 feet of their foundation. And it was serious money. We've put millions of dollars into correcting Godfrey Brook, Hospital Brook, an O'Brien Brook. Okay? We have always, as a town, covered the costs of fixing them.
Do we know if that would be standard municipal practice?
I don't know, but it's been...
Curious.
It's Milford practice.
It's been standard Milford practice.
I understand, but now
I know, Andy.
we're talking about some large bills.
Well, no, even before. I mean, but going to a homeowner saying, oh, by the way, it's going to cost $300,000-400,000 to fix the section of the brook on your property line, you're wiping people out.
You don't own a condo in Florida, do you?
But then also, if one person does it, but the 2 people on both sides of them don't want to fix it, it accomplishes nothing. And that's what happened years ago. And that's why, correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking about, I think it's almost 12 to 14 miles of brooks between the 3 of them. And of the 14 miles of the brooks, like almost 10 of them are eating people's yards, literally, or have been until we repair them. Where to to the chairman's point, like, there were people who were sitting on their back porch, like, in,
Fishing.
yeah, pretty much, Paul.
Well, I mean, I guess it's a question in my mind of how many homeowners are affected. and what-
A lot.
But, no, but that would support at least raising the question about whether you could do a pro rata assessment if you're talking about dozens or hundreds of people.
Well, we've also been
No, you're
very, very
talking
fortunate
each
about
section.
grants.
One of the things decades ago that we had the discussion is, are we going to allocate back then $20 million plus to fix the brooks altogether? And first of all, the money wasn't really available, but it could be made available. But secondly, our ability to get grants goes away if we've already fixed the problem. Not technically. You can still apply and say, I need money that I spent $5 million already fixing a problem that's no longer a problem. The government grants look and say, well, town X doesn't have the money to fix a problem that's there. So we decided to build or fix sections as we got grants. So I guess technically the town could turn its back on its residents and say, okay, Andy, your assessment is $280,000 for your section. To me, that's putting,
Obviously, that would not be something that's practical if that was the kind of number.
I also, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah,
But I
because
mean, the Central Street Bridge, to me, that's a no-brainer, right?
that's a town
That is the
thing.
most basic element of town government.
Yep.
But, we do need to start looking at the pecking order of priorities. And I'm not picking on the Godfrey Brook, I'm just raising these kinds of
No,
questions.
the Godfrey Brook, the O'Brien Brook, the Hospital Brook have always been headaches because there's so many miles of it. I don't know what the cost estimate would be now, Paul?
Just one thought, that is part of the town's stormwater management system. So all that gets all the lowlands and stuff, the way stuff flows, all goes into that. So-
I mean, technically, we could justify it. At the end of the day, town meeting's going to take care of Milford residents.
Mr. Chairman, there are many sections of both brooks that are in very disrepair. My full property borders each brook. O'Brien Brook on one side, Godfrey Brook on the other. And on the side of my property is about a 20-foot section that the wall has completely collapsed. My neighbor had his piece fixed, which is about 10 feet further up. I've been asking Highway for 5 years to fix my property, and they haven't yet. And I'm not gonna certainly pursue it based on my own position, but
Well-
I do have a piece of, a 20-foot section that the wall has completely caved in.
And
My
that,
property is starting to flow into.
and Brownie, that's been, 100 years ago when the brooks were put in, they were put in with rocks and all sealed up with dirt. And over the 100 years, the dirt's washed away and the rocks now start falling and they cause a major dam as it collapses, and then the water floods people's yards. And so we've tried to do as much as we can. I mean, obviously, it would be great if, I don't even know what it would be today, but back then it was
40 million.
20-some million, now maybe 40, 50 million, we could just take and fix all the brook. Now, the good news was Scotty's been doing each section according to the specs he wants, he needs. So it's not like we're doing any Band-Aids. We do some Band-Aids where we can, but like Water Street, if you go down and look, that is done right, and it'll be there for countless decades. But it is an issue. We've been averaging $3 to $8 million free cash, and we've been using it to fund a lot of our capital needs, because our capital budget now is up to a massive 1.7 million. Stormwater management alone eats that. So we got to be careful as we start adding, and that's why I bring up, I'm not picking on Countryside, but it could be $2 to $3 million. And that could be our entire surplus.
Sure, and you know, too, that the state has, their revenues are decreasing, too. I think there was some, publications about it, some publicity about it. I mean, we have to look at that now going forward. They said they're not going to cut local aid now, but who knows what they're going to do. So I mean, we have to keep that also on our forefront of our minds as well when we think about our budgets and where our money should go. So,
Well, Dave, I think the biggest issue that we know we're going to face is the high school is starting to roll down the road of being built. We have a 270-day window. We got to deal with in August the submission of the feasibility. If it is a mere $250 million, 180 to $200 million to renovate the high school, you think about Woodland. That was $60 million. We added $2.5 million of interest charges, somewhere in that range.
Streets were low.
Yeah, I was getting there, saying we added 2.5. This will be at least 3 times the expense size, and interest rates are no longer at 2%. So if the interest rates stay at 4 or 5%, that's, in my mind, the scariest movie in the world for me, is that we're going to have to come up with $7-8 million in the budget each year. And you're right, we got to plan for it, and we got to make sure that it's not at the last minute saying, oh, we need to increase our expenses by $7 million on top of normal increases. Questions, comments? That's just my opinion. Everybody else may differ, but I don't see that high school interest going away.
Let me add a little more fuel to the
I
fire.
was going to say, if there's no questions, subcommittee report. School?
Yes, elephant in the room. Well, the FY25 budgeting season for the school district has begun, and they're looking at a FY25 level service only without initiatives. Budget is projected at about $74.3 million.
What is that of an increase?
Well, it's a level service increase of $4.97 million. Plus, if we add in the new proposed initiatives,
Sorry to interrupt, Mike, but what percentage is that an increase? Is that,
I can pull that number up for you.
what is
I
it,
don't
5? Is it
I do
8?
not have the percentage in my head right
It's
now.
$5 million, right?
Yeah,
570?
basically. Yeah.
You're looking at like 6-7%.
4.97 million, yeah.
6-7%.
So you have the level service increase over last year of 4.97 million. Now, along comes the proposed initiatives, and that initial package reads up to $7.27 million in initiatives, new initiatives for FY25, which gives you a true potential total budget increase of $12.24 million. Now, just hold that thought for a minute. Now, if we look at that $74.3 million level service FY25 budget and deduct the estimated, and I emphasize estimated, Chapter 70 funding of a whopping $55.23 million, gives us an estimated FY25 Milford contribution of $19.1 million. Now, comparing that $19.1 million Milford contribution for FY25, comparing it with the FY24 $22.5 million, shows that we have a reduction in Milford's contribution. Number one, if Chapter 70 comes through the way they say, of a $3.43 million reduction. But that's all talked about level service, and addressing your concerns about increases in costs, highway department, capital surprises. For Milford's contribution to remain level with FY24, assuming Chapter 70 comes through, the new initiatives would have to be trimmed down from $7.27 million down to $3.43 million. Any additional initiatives would have to be considered as an increase in our budgeting costs for FY25 over FY24. Now, I just want to share some remarks that Superintendent McIntyre made during the January 6th Saturday morning budget meeting. He did, and part of this is in support of the initiatives which are under review at this present time. January 6th, they reviewed some of them, and there is a continuation of that meeting on January 18th at 6 o'clock at the high school. But Superintendent McIntyre pointed out the enrollment has been relatively stable for the past 18 months. However, he's seen more apartments, condos, and homes coming online here in Milford, so he kind of does expect a higher enrollment in the future. To the Chapter 70 comment, he's anticipating significant investment from the state through this Chapter 70 payment, which is driven by the Student Opportunity Act. And he did mention about the approximately $8 million increase in the Chapter 70 over last period. The Milford school system's school choice revenue continues to decline. We have capacity issues, and we can't just open the doors to school choice in. And they've used that money a lot for a lot of programs. And that money is going away gradually every year. It's been going away. In fact, I've asked them to, where they have one-time only expenses on the budget worksheet, to spell them out in black and white, not have them hidden in between the lines anywhere, but spell them out on the budget worksheet so that we can clearly identify what is one-time items, because some of them may be coming over, migrating over from the choice in money. It's going to make their way into the budget money, but we got to watch that.
Now, my understanding is that right now we are at capacity.
Pretty much.
So we're not allowing new kids except the ones that are grandfathered. I mean, you have to be humane. If you got your brother in the Milford school system, the sister wants to come in, you got to let her in. But it's
School choice, you mean? not
school
residence.
choice.
Choice in.
No, residence, it's a given, but school choice. Now, if you think about it, it's not that we're not making more money, we're cutting off. Seniors graduate. There's no new freshmen coming in because we can't accommodate them. So that part of school choice money goes down. And it'll keep going down as long as we keep graduating school choice kids and not replacing them with undergrads.
How much is the school choice number annually?
1.3?
I think it's under $1 million now, potentially.
It could be.
So if you look at it, you're like,
In?
yeah.
Choice in or choice out?
In,
Choice in.
It is like 700,000.
Okay, so it has already started going down.
It's been that way for a while.
Every year it's just been dropping.
So if you look at that versus the state recognizing, in the let's set this estimate aside, the last few years, Chapter 70 money's gone up quite a bit. It's gone up by far more than this has gone down, organized around the same problem.
And that's one of the things that you have to take into consideration. We're declining, we have declining school choice Gazinta money. Okay? The Gazauta money goes up,
It's over
but
3 million now.
it's $3 million that we're paying for our kids who are going out.
Put that in there now.
But on the other hand, this $8 million, that potential increase, that takes into consideration all of the kids coming in. So it's not clear cut that we're losing X dollars a year on school choice because we're picking it up on increased Chapter 70 money. Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
That's right, thank you. Superintendent McIntyre also pointed out that our buildings are aging and need more support and attention, and those necessities are showing up in the budget. By the way, if you recall, a few years ago, we had ESSER funding for school employees, and it has come home to roost now. And there is, I think it's about $800,000 or $900,000 in the level service budget, because the ESSER obligation has now fallen over into the ongoing
But that
operating
was
budget.
the original $6 million. We got a $7 million increase year one in Chapter 70 money. The school budget only went up $6 because the 3-year ESSER grant came to an end. Because we made a very clear point to say, you can't increase all $7 million of Chapter 70 incremental, because there's $1 million that you added on. The ESSER money, we had recommended that they only use it for one-time expenses, but they hired people. And the minute you hire them, they're on the payroll, and you can't get rid of them. So that $1 million, at least, we recouped. One second, Chris, you had a question?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I just, on your Gesundta, I just wanted to just let you know that as a town, there's only Gesundta. Because we only pay the school choice out. The school gets the Gesundta. It doesn't come to the town. So as a town, we only have Gesundta. We get no Gesundta.
Yeah, we pay the way it's
School-
set up by
We pay
law.
out, they get in. It's like
We
the
pay
best date of all
tuitions
time.
out,
Let
which
me
is
tell
$3
you.
million.
Yeah. And they get
Now-
the 700,000.
Reduction in the money that the state gives us. So
Yes.
On the one side,
Yeah.
they're saying we're giving you 8 million, but we're taking 3 million.
Exactly.
And it goes out to the other towns.
Right.
Through school choice and charter.
And that's the last Gesundta
And right now,
of the night, right
money
there.
coming in is at $750,000. And prediction, it'll get lower and lower if we don't accept kids in. Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Sorry, Mike.
Another area of concern has to do with high needs, even though it was pointed out that the general population, student population is level, the high needs population does continue to increase. The students with special needs are coming to the school system with more complex needs, and they're seeing greater challenges with behavior and increasing mental health needs. More than 50% of the town's school families speak a language other than English as the primary language in their home. And more than 1/3 of the Milford students are identified as English learners.
Mike, may I add one data point? So more than 50% speak a language other than English in their home, which is higher than Boston.
In addition, they have chronic absenteeism. I think this is kind of an after effect from COVID, maybe. But if you will look at the initiatives, you'll find there's actually some investments in areas where they're doing things to try to manage the absenteeism issues. And they do, on a positive note, they plan to roll out a new ELA and literacy program next year. This is, according to Superintendent McIntyre, is a long time coming and sorely needed. And interesting, they continue to see fewer qualified applicants for teaching, administrative, and support roles. And this makes it more difficult for them to recruit people. So that means a little more money has to be put up there to compete with other systems. And I just want to mention in passing that most of you know Kathy Perry, the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Human Resources, is apparently going to be retiring next summer, and this will be her last budget cycle.
David?
I'd just like to add something to that, Mr. Nicholson, is that when we talk about a new high school need, the administration office is, I believe, looking to lease out space in the commercial space in Milford, so they could have some centralized office. For, I don't know what department they were thinking of doing, but I know they were talking about having people.
They're in a general state of fleshing out something because they're out of room at the
Right.
high school. So they need space. And one of the solutions to that is to lease space somewhere in town that's logical for them, because there are elements that does more of their work not necessarily at the high school, that they have the flexibility of being located away from the campus. And this is what they're going to be looking at.
I mentioned
And-
the Family Resource Center,
yeah,
so similar to that.
as an example. So that's going to be coming up as a operating expense if they do actually pick up a lease at some point.
So that's an additional cost to the town that
Yep.
because of space issues.
Yeah, and again, if we get an incremental 8 million, that will help a lot. But until we know for sure, we got to be careful. Because it's really easy to build in $7 million worth of incremental. If we don't get that Chapter 70. Now, I read in the Globe last night, I think it was, that the budget cuts are going to hit general funding, but not local aid in schools.
Yeah, that's what they said.
So now,
That's the first cut. First round through is $1 billion off the top.
now, I remember back in 2003, that was the same message we got. And then when it got tighter and tighter and tighter, we got cut. So we got to be careful. That's my only message is, there's a lot of special needs, bridges, culverts, that add 2-3 million here. Some of those are one-time expenses, thank God. but $7 million incremental, knowing that in 4 or 5 years, we're going to have to come up with $7 or $8 million.
Well, during the January 6th meeting, were making cuts. The school committee, in discussions with the school administration, were making cuts, trimming that initiative list. But I don't see $3.5 million there yet. I'd be amazed if that goal is accomplished. Carla, you got any thoughts, or David? But I don't see it.
I don't see it. The one other thing I think, hearing the conversation tonight, and I was thinking about it as we were listening to the meeting, which was super helpful just to be a participant and be able to listen. And I thought back to when Dr. McIntyre and our head of facilities was here about the boilers. One thing that I continue to think about personally as we think about capital and as I look at the capital plan, and we know that even though we've been picked to start the process for the high school, there's still time down the road for the high school or other schools. I worry about other infrastructure types of things that we are going to need to do between now and when a shovel hits the ground or when it's completed for that school or others in town that we don't have built into the capital plan today.
And I think you're right, because if you think about it, Stacy is showing its age. And Stacy's 20 years away from being funded for a massive project. I believe Stacy's the next one on the list. But if it's going to take us another 5 years, 6 years to do the high school, it'll be 10 years after that to 12 years after that to do Stacy. So the needs are just going to get harder and harder. Because if you think about it, we have 5 schools in Milford. The average life is 40 to 50 years. So it's 8 to 10 years that it takes for the next initiative. Stacy's next, and then Memorial showing its age.
And they're working within the confines of building out the facilities. As we talked about when they were here, they're trying their best, and it's certainly working. But these are aging schools in that there's going to have to be dollars.
I'll tell you what I was amazed at. I sat in on the SBA meeting where they invited towns to come and make their pitch for why they should be accepted. Boy, as I listened, our argument was the lightest of the light.
Really?
Yeah, because there's people coming in for these schools, and I won't mention the towns, that are 80 years old.
And in shambles, huh?
And in shambles. I mean, the high school, it's not optimum. We know that. But it's not in shambles.
Right.
So I sat there and said, oh, my God, if we make it, I'm amazed we're making it for the high school since it's only been 8 years since they approved Woodland.
Yeah.
And again, it was just listening to 80-year-old schools, and this is crumbling, they've shut down this wing, they've done... It's not going to get any easier. And you're right, we got to be careful because, I mean, when Memorial came to fruition back when we were kids, that was the new school. It had an auditorium, not an auditorium, a gymnasium. It had lockers. Boy, the kids were so lucky. Well, that was 50 years ago. And now the wear and tear that the kids put on it is showing.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Exactly what you just said is exactly why I know that Milford is heading in the right direction. And the reason why these people need to go 80 years, because they don't have the other funding to spend the 60% to match, or the 40% to match the state 60. We can go ahead and do a school every 8 to 10 years because we have prudently spended our operational budget to be able to afford another school after 10 years. It's when you start getting off the rails that you start being that town that has windows literally falling in on children and they wait 80 years. We're able to transform from one project to another because we have enough free cash, enough spending and stabilization that we can literally go from, we just got done Woodland, now we move to the high school. Now we're done with the high school, let's move to Stacy. And the second that we leave that good planning that we've constantly done, we will start to be those towns. Because the fact that, like I said, we can go from one school project and immediately start transitioning into, okay, we're not going to put in, our comprehensive plan now, but we'll at least start thinking about it. That's because our town has spent and saved accordingly. And I think that's an important thing. So, like I said, if we deviate from that and we start getting crazy, we'll start being those towns that have to wait 80 years for a school.
Well, the good news is, in all the decades I've been involved, I've never seen town meeting not take care of our kids.
Yep.
There's a lot of people, your family's been here a lot longer than mine, but if you look back to the history, one way or another, town meeting always takes care of our kids. It's just right now we're at a peak challenge. Anything else?
I just want to save a subcommittee meeting by mentioning to the subcommittee that the subcommittee assignments that we had last year, we're going to stay with those same ones, okay? And we'll just proceed on that basis. I want to wait until after they conclude the initiatives reviews before we really get together, so at least you know what area to look into now for your own areas. Thank you.
And we did have an opportunity, I had an opportunity to sit with Superintendent McIntyre and talk about what's coming up on the new high school, what he's looking for. I mean, things like a field house. It's hard to talk about spending extra money, but this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to add on to Milford High. Just like in the early 70s, we talked about a pool, and everybody kept saying, we don't need a pool. No, we don't need it, but we funded it, and it served us incredibly well. So there will be discussions, and people have to talk, what do we do and how we can afford it, but the administration is thinking about 50 years in the future, because that'll be the next bite of the apple for the high school. Once we finish it now, when you think about, and I may be all wrong, and history may be all wrong, but it's been 8 to 10 years per school. So by the time we cycle back to the high school, I won't be here to worry about it, but my grandkids will be. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Brown.
Perfect, thank you.
Zach Taylor is sick.
Yeah, unfortunately, Zach is sick. Chris has a previous engagement, so that's the next meeting. I'll give him more in-depth. I know Zach sent you some
Zach wanted to
information.
come, and he fed me a lot of information,
Good.
but I agree that when he's sick, we'd rather not have him here
That's-
sharing his sickness.
Yeah. So basically, my role today is just to give you an update on the timelines for, can't believe I'm talking about this, but FY25 budget season, getting ready to kick off. We have auditing starting in 10 days. That'll get us through the mid-February. Simultaneously, we will begin on the annual budget process for the upcoming 2025 fiscal year. In the Personnel Board meets every Wednesday, the second Wednesday of every month. So at their February meeting, they're going to discuss the potential COLA increases for FY25. That'll be the first step. The Select Board and Finance Committee Chairman will meet with the Town Administrator and the Finance team to develop and support the budget directives. At that point, once the above is all completed, then we'll start to distribute all the information to the departments to begin building their FY25 budgets. So that'll have, and all these timelines run parallel to what we've done in the 7 years I've been here. All budgets will be reviewed by the Finance Committee and your subcommittees. That should get us into mid to late February. And then the Select Board will meet with the departments that fall under their oversight. And then once all approval and final budgets have been reviewed, we'll ask the department heads to send all their final budget information to us by the 15th of March. And that's pretty much been the timeline from, again, every year going forward.
And again, we start in January asking the departments to come forward and discuss their capital needs, but especially what they're proposing for the fall town meeting. Even though it's 9 months away, 10 months away. We're already starting, tonight was the highway department.
Other than that, just give you a brief update on the revenue where we are right now. And right now, the first 6 months, we're at 52%, which is good. And a year ago, we were at 51% at this time. So we're following right along, right on the timelines that the prior year tells us. Okay? As far as expenses go, currently, we're at a run rate of 47%. So 6 months in, we're doing pretty good. That does not include our OPEB contribution of $600,000 and our stabilization fund contribution of $1 million. Now, that's going to be done mid-February. Last year, it was done November. Well, we contributed to OPEB last year in November, but we didn't have a stabilization fund appropriation. And the reason why we're not doing it till February this year, because we're running into a cash flow issue right now, because the retirement board, their contribution was increased by $1 million this year. So it's not anything to be concerned about. It's just a matter of we have to be delayed till February instead of November. We're not restricted to when we have to contribute, obviously, but according to Chris, that's the best time frame. And Chris will go through that the next meeting with the investments and where we are with that and payments for that. So, and ultimately, a year ago, we were at 46%. Okay? So everything's falling right in line. Everything's doing well. I got to commend the department heads because they've been pretty frugal about their spending and what they're spending it on. They all certainly come to the accounting team to see if it's within budget and projecting the budget between now and June. What can they do? Of course, they all want to spend their money if they know they're going to have money available. And we try to discourage that. Just because you have money at the end of the fiscal year doesn't mean you should go out and spend it. Although some of them try to pick up a few things that they need, supplies and stuff. But the overall financial situation right now is right on target with a year ago. We're doing very well. Projections from spending should maintain. So I think things are looking pretty good between now and the end of the year.
Well, one of the things that a lot of towns face, and even the federal government, is use it or lose it, which is a disincentive to being frugal. I mean, what's saved us over how many years is that department heads spend the money as if it's theirs, knowing that just because they turn back a surplus this year, we're not going to cut their budget next year. And it's going to be evaluated for the need. And that's, as you say, that's paid off for many years.
Yeah. And there was some discussions in the prior meetings about the vehicles that were potentially being purchased. And I just want to bring up two comments here. One, the assessor's office, they did an outstanding job of choosing their vehicle, came within budget, and they decided to go with the state bid vendor. And working with Rick, that worked out very well. I have the titles to the vehicles. I haven't gotten the bill yet. So but that's coming any day now. And then the youth center. I worked with Jen identifying some state bid vendors, and she called me today. They're ready to move on National Van Builders out of Attleboro, I believe. It's going to come a little over budget, but they had a commissioners meeting Monday night, and they decided out of their own budget to fund the additional monies. And one of the things that were coming up was the cameras on the vehicle. The commission absolutely insisted on having the cameras just to ensure safety and transparency to any potential issues going on. But National Van Builders is a state bid vendor as well. So they both did a great job, and I know there were concerns in the past about that, but that's moving forward. Everything was according to policy and procedure, and I just wanted to keep everybody's mind at ease as far as those two situations that were going on. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot, Tommy, so I don't know if you have these answers or not, but just maybe you can go back and ask if you don't. But two things I'm curious about. One is the ancillary revenue, like the hotel sales tax that we get.
Yeah.
Is that, like, how are we doing with that compared to budget and
it's coming in.
last year?
It's coming in, and that's more than we thought. So I know I made a comment about there aren't as many families as he thought, but I believe there's a couple of other hotels that are.
Well, no, the
housing.
Best Western, we estimated that there'd be 50 families there with 2 kids per family, all going to Milford schools. My understanding, and I don't have it confirmed, there's going to be 50 families there, but not all the kids are going to Milford schools. Because they have families and other issues, they'll be going to other schools too. So the impact on our school system to date isn't as heavy as we thought.
And I don't have numbers for you, Dave.
That's fine. I was just
but
curious about
There is sales tax money still coming in.
It's still coming in? Good.
Yeah.
We're like at 2/3 of the year collection already, so we're okay.
I think one of the questions that would be nice to answer, when the state rents out a hotel, and I can't blame Best Western, if I could get all my rooms rented from somebody like the state that you know is going to pay you, I'm going to consider it. But do they pay the surtax?
My guess is no.
What I was told is they were guaranteeing it for
A certain amount of time, yes.
1 to 3 months. But
Then you're
after
on your-
the 3 months, are they going to say the extra surtax that we allowed you to put on hotel rooms when we spent the money we promised you, we can't afford? I'm just curious
And
to,
you know, to that point, and I forget who I was talking to about this, but Franklin, they have one hotel, and that hotel is completely occupied by immigrants, and once they move on, the next crew is coming in. And they were told that, to your point, 3 months, after that, you're on your own, and they're still coming. So I don't know how that's going to play out
because
in
we
this town, but...
were building in, Paulie, what was it, a little over $1 million a year in that tax?
Last year, I think we lowered the budget to 750 during the current budget cycle with that thought in mind.
But it's still significant, $750,000.
600 though, so we're actually ahead of the game linearly.
Yeah, we just got to look for next year when we do the budget to
Maybe we
see.
should pass a restaurant tax in Milford to make up for that.
Michael, we had that discussion, and I'll admit, I was one of the people who spoke against it.
Shame on you.
Because, I'm sorry, when I travel, I pay hotel tax, state tax, dog tax, cat tax. In New York City, it's like 30% on top of my hotel bill.
Not as
So
bad as El Paso, I'll tell you.
Okay, but people coming to Milford are not Milford residents. But the restaurant tax, that's us. We're taxing ourselves. If you go out to dinner, hopefully a lot of people support local Milford restaurants. Adding 6% to that, you just right pocket, left pocket. You're taking it out of my pocket. So that's why a lot of us didn't support the restaurant tax. And today, I'd have to really have an understanding as to how that would be beneficial. I want to support local businesses, and putting an extra tax on it,
Well, just the point is, we're losing tax in another area that's not going to resolve itself. So if we resign ourselves to giving up that tax income, then okay, that's the way it'll be, as opposed to looking for other sources of income, which is the government way of doing
well, one
things.
way or another, you're taking it out of my pocket.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you reduce by $250,000, $300,000 the revenue line, the expenses stay the same, you're just increasing taxes. Because, a lot of people notice that they got a bump this year. And people have come to me and said, why did it jump? It was no surprise. We told people up front, there'd be $200 extra in your tax bill to fund the geriatric authority. I mean, I find it amazing when people forget that when you increase your expenses, you're going to increase your taxes.
And theoretically, it could have gone higher.
No, yeah.
It's just, my second question, my point
Yeah.
is, so with all these big box retailers going dark, up on Fortune Boulevard and whatnot, like, is there any, indication of how that's going to affect their taxes? Because a lot of taxes are based on, building value, property value, but also if there's a tenant in there, more the better, because it's on an income basis or revenue basis.
Yeah, I can't answer that right now,
I'm
Dave.
just
Yeah.
curious,
Yeah.
so I think that should be researched or looked at.
Yeah, I'll make sure we look into it.
See
for you.
what the tax implication may be for all these big box stores going out of business and going vacant.
Yeah, definitely.
Any other questions? Lauren, you're awful quiet.
I was just thinking about TIFs, but I don't have to talk about that now.
We haven't even done one in a while, so.
We haven't done one in a while.
3 years, man.
Milford has always been very selective with their TIFs.
I think we did 2.
Yeah, but Ronnie, TIFs to me are fine if you're building a building, because the comments came back that we gave one of the last TIFs, they left the town. Well, wait a minute, they didn't take their building. So when they built a new building, the property tax is still being paid. Well, it's not being paid by the people who you gave the TIF to. Frankly, Charlotte,
Even better.
frankly, Scarlett, I don't care who pays the tax, as long as it's being paid.
The TIF goes away with,
Well, it's also a benefit that if you give somebody a 3-year TIF and they bail out a year, the people coming in now pay full bore. And the TIFs are only based on incremental. If you have a house worth $100 and you add $10 to the value of the business by expanding it, you're only getting a TIF on the 10. You're not getting a TIF on the 100 you were already paying on. But I'd love the ideas of TIFs if it benefits the town. And so far, we've been pretty good at making sure that we're not, because a lot of TIFs are given because it's going to increase the business opportunities. It's going to increase the restaurants. It's.
Of course, we haven't had any inquiries either, so,
That's,
you know.
I think the last one was like a manufacturing plant, but they failed.
Yeah, there were 2 of them up on Maple. Yeah.
but again, that was expanding, so we would have gotten more tax revenue on the property tax. Any other questions?
All right. More to come.
Thanks for stepping in.
Definitely. Thank you.
I think the message we're getting from Zach and from Brownie is things are going as planned, but we got to be vigilant in watching for things like $3 million surprise expenses on bridges and new families coming in. What is the pleasure of the meeting? Motion to adjourn, does anybody, by Andy, seconded by Brandt. Motion to adjourn is not debatable. Lauren?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Thank you for watching. Good night, and stay tuned.